Somebody mentioned during the call that divorce laws make red pill necessary. I think that was maybe you,
Right.
Chase. It sounded
Yeah,
like.
that might have been me. Yeah.
Yeah. Like what's actively being done by the Christian pill and by guys in your community to fix the corrupt divorce court system?
That's a great question. I mean, uh, this is big within the Christian nationalism movement. So there's a what is he, like a state senator or something? His name is Dusty Devers. He's in
Oh yeah.
Oklahoma, and they're making no fault divorce illegal in Oklahoma, as well as banning abortion, and now they're working on banning pornography in Oklahoma as well. But like that's huge. Christian nationalists are big into this. No
So
fault divorce needs to be destroyed.
okay, so what is the definition of no fault divorce as you understand it?
As far as I understand it goes, it's basically you can just decide that you want to get a divorce, and then you can just do it.
Without
I
proving fault, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's say that you can prove fault or you manufacture fault, right? That then becomes the other problem, right? And the
Hmm.
law still exists as like removing no fault divorce is maybe a step in the equation in a forward direction, but I think like reforming divorce law, family law in general, the way that it operates is a more significant movement towards something that's going to encourage guys to wife up them hoes.
Dude, I completely agree. Look, I'm 28 years old, and like I don't know squat about family court and divorce laws and how all that stuff works, but I do know that it's a problem. And I know that back in, like, I don't know, I think like the 40s or the 50s, if you wanted to get a divorce from your spouse, I think in much of America, you had to actually build a legal case and take it before a judge for them to even approve it. Like it was a hefty process, and you had to bring evidence for why the divorce should happen, so on and so forth. That, like, I don't know, I don't fully understand why we went away from that model. And you said something earlier in this conversation. You said that women are, I can't remember how you put it, but they have advantages in family court. They're encouraged to
They're encouraged to
divorce,
behave badly. Yeah.
encouraged to behave badly, and that works in their favor in
Do you want
family
me to
court.
walk you through some of the things, or?
Yes, please, absolutely.
Okay, so the notion of child support. So let's deal with that first. Um, the custodial parent that has the children. So in Canada, for example, where me and Mike live, if you have the kids about 41% of the time, sorry, 41% of the time or more, one of the parents, then it's considered shared custody. If mom has the kids 60% of the time or more, then she's the custodial parent. She gets to make unilateral decisions. She can
Hmm.
do whatever she wants, basically. If she meets a hot dude across the country and wants to move 4,000 kilometers away, she can take the kids and go. She can initiate medical procedures without the father's consent. Any kind of medical procedure. She can. There's all kinds of shit that has happened, like hyphenate the last name. She meets another guy, he wants to adopt the kids, change the last name, hyphenate the last name, stuff like that. And I mean, that's just one example of one of the things that women are encouraged to leverage. And on top of that, here's the other problem too. Um, we know children do better with access to both parents, and good equal parenting is going to produce more useful members of society. Women that are getting all of these custody orders are doing so not just to control, but also for enrichment. A friend of mine was, I think, the kid was like 4 or 5 or something like that when they parted ways. He cited, the affordability for daycare and clothing and extracurricular for like swimming lessons for tiny tot class and stuff like that. It's about $1,000 a month. We'll call it $1,000 a month was what they were spending. But based on his income, the child support tables would have compelled him to pay over $4,800 a month.
Hmm.
Now, that's not for the child's need. That's just because the government cooked up some table that said, well, if you make X amount of dollars and this percentage needs to go to the child. It doesn't maintain the child's lifestyle. It enriches the mother's lifestyle. So it thereby encourages mothers who are getting divorced, and by the way, also untying the knot most of the time, to fight for primary custody because they don't just get control and the kids, they also get more of his money. So that's just an example of one incentive that's in place in family law. Now that's in Canada. There's certain states where that exists and others where they don't. Like, for example, in Florida, Kentucky, Michigan, and California, you have default 50-50 divorce. So custody, if you want to be the primary custody or the primary caregiver, you have to prove that the other parent's basically a degenerate piece of shit, right? Like she's a prostitute, he's a cocaine dealer. It'd be bad for the child to be with the parent equal time. Child should be with me. So there's lots of, and this is just one of like hundreds. Like there's lots of mechanisms in place that they've written into family law to, and I'm doing this in quotes, obviously for those that are listening, but to protect and preserve the interests of the children and the mother, right? And it's like, okay,
Is
that's
it
interesting.
explicit to protect the interests of the mother? Like, is there anything
Well,
in
that's
there?
the argument that they use. It's like children need their mother, and it protects the interests of the children. But if the children's like cost to maintain their lifestyle in extracurriculars, school school clothing is like $1,000 at that time. Why do tables exist that compel men to pay 4 or 5 times, 6, 7 times more than what they're paying when they're married? And then they don't get a say in how to raise the kid anymore because she's got control, right? So it robs fathers of the ability to be a father and parent their own child. Like many men these days find themselves in a scenario where after they get divorced, if she's a primary custody parent, the new guy, whoever she's banging now, spends more time with his kids than he does, right? So that's just one angle that encourages women to behave badly through family law. And I don't think guys contemplate that and understand a lot of these narratives until they actually live it. Like you're 28 years old, you haven't heard of some of these things, right?
Yeah. Well, and this is exactly why I made the point in the space last night that this is why the red pill is important for men, because there's a lot of hoes out there that are totally untrustworthy and aren't virtuous that will completely screw dudes over, and guys will get blindsided by this stuff, and it ruins your life, and that's why I see the red pill as very necessary for men nowadays. I think one of the problems that I see though is that it's fundamentally a reactionary movement, and what you're describing is extremely problematic. And all of those laws, in my opinion, over a long span of time, need to be reformed, and they can be reformed. And I guess my
Like
question,
that's the target. The target should not be no fault divorce.
as in eliminating no fault divorce, right?
Yeah, forget about no fault divorce. I mean, if you remove the incentives to get divorced
Yeah,
for women to untie the knot, then no fault divorce will sort of take care of itself. She's not going to want to untie the knot and cheat on him to take the kids and get his money and half his
right.
stuff.
So yeah, I guess that was going to be my follow up question. Is like, what do you think? What would an ideal family court law situation look like to eliminate all of those incentives? Like, what's the most ideal situation to protect men, so that we can reverse a lot of this stuff, so it isn't so dangerous for guys to get married?
The pendulum swung in the opposite direction. There was a time when men would get divorced where they would have custody of the kids. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that you're aware of that. It's talked about, in the old books. Do you know what the purpose of marriage is, by the way?
From a secular worldly perspective or from the biblical perspective?
Well, it's been studied. There's this gal, her name's Stephanie Coots. She wrote a book called A History of Marriage, and she wanted to figure out why people have been getting married. So she was going through court records, diaries, religious records, all these entries, throughout history, and it was determined that the reason why people have gotten married in the past was the acquisition of in-laws. You know, it's suggested that when there was no state, when there was no government, and when there was no fire services and policing and schooling and medical system, you would want to integrate your large family with her large family, and you would have access to those tools and resources, and you'd have access to the muscle and the education and the people with certain things that you may not have in your own family. So it was a blending of the families, right? So it wasn't about love, it wasn't about religion, it wasn't about any of those things. According to all the data that was collected from all those texts, it was just about the acquisition of in-laws.
How far back does that go?
That's a good question. I read that book a few years ago and I can't remember, but I think it was as far back as she could find the records.
Right, because the original concept of marriage comes from this idea of becoming a one flesh union under God, to have this container, spiritual container, to have a family and to be fruitful and multiply, and to not create multi-generational distress. There's this argument for polygyny from these Bible bros, which makes no sense because Solomon and David all bore the wrath from their actions, and there's nowhere in the Bible that explicitly promotes that, although there were those examples in the Old Testament. So yeah, it'd be curious to know how far that goes back. Because from a
I don't
biblical
know.
perspective, that sounds like a purely secular compilation
Sure.
of data.
I really hope you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to watch the full-length podcast, you can find that over here, that clip's from. If you're newer to the channel, make sure you hit subscribe over here, and pin down below in the top comment, you'll find a bunch of useful links to my website, my supplement line, books, and a bunch of other stuff. Have an amazing day. Peace out.